See, I did try to judge.
Is this good? That will be.
You might have to
I
use
have-
my machine and your machine at the same time. Just three different machines and a controller.
Is
So
it
what
coming
you can do
from
is
the
just put your
room
computer
or
here.
laptop? Okay.
Barbara, can you still hear us? Barbara?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we're going to start this over again. I started the recording. Again, this is R795, week 9. And last week we had Vanessa Denon. It was fun. This week we have Merve Basdogan. And I'm not going to redo the whole introduction I did on her. Just let's say she's in the midst of second year here, sort of as a postdoc, an instructional he wants to teach, and in the School of Public Health, she worked for 1 year as a postdoc and doing research. So Merve is going to talk about.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Thank you for having this. My name is Merve. So from the beginning, I was online learning from potential. And in 2015, I started and I came for the time and and I was researching UX learning who is currently in how to use these alternative and alternative things at the same time speculative regarding how to use this study and so it was a very fine experience in terms of publication, production. So I had to publication, learn page, to the idea garden is so beginning. So and we were producing all getting some inspiration from and 2021, it was the best for all operations earlier. I defined my title concept from a post-phenomenological practice. It was an analysis study. I had 5 different types of questions in terms of how educational technology scholars perceive, consume, and experience technology. I proposed a novel framework, It is a technology how we can space agent level of operation and culture in these different concepts, including distance learning, e-learning. It is currently in the second
It's very cool.
and just after I started and these are the some research including technological frames or health equity transfer strategy from physical to and to under review by learning and learning. And currently I'm working as a research design in the again, you are very loyal to my institution. It's cool. On my brief overview, this is on at the intersection of four main components, including pedagogy, case and user. Sometimes I am interested in how pedagogy informs user behavior. Sometimes how specific pedagogy informs case use, or sometimes all of them, how they. So today, based on my experience, tips with you about how we can write a powerful and strong research questions or carry out reviews. And so let's start with the metaphor of chain of reasoning. And this is the metaphor by Curt. Writing process is a logical process and they influence each other. Today, like these three levels, where your study idea originated, what is the rationale for doing this study, and what is your focus? How are you going to improve your focus? So I'll try my personal experience to help you during your process. Types of literature review. I mean, it's a very voluminous chapter with different kind of ideas. From all dissertation, if you write this literature review, you can clearly define theoretical framework and provide terminology or more even you can show history what happened in a topic or in a search area. This is so important. I mean, we don't all research that are confirming each other. So conflicting ideas are important for your research. For you to show you have ability to create and evaluate the so it's a place for you to show your skill set. And most importantly, identify the gap, provide your motivation here. And again, your all the relation in these contracts and theories, ideas. By the way, there are 3 people in the waiting room. I'm accepting them. Sumi, Paolo, and Karen. Okay, they are joining.
Thanks for joining. We forgot you. It was a little difficult setting up, but we got it working now. So yeah,
No problem.
it's recorded. We'll send.
So let's start with tip number 1. What is not? So your review is not a summary of the people are or like you provide clear consistent and what kind of methodology and how any gap? How do you identify the gaps?
Can you hear Merve? Hello, testing.
It breaks up a bit.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
I hear you loud and clear.
You hear me? Can you hear Merve?
No?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The microphone is really sensitive on that. And I wonder, is this one?
It's not working.
So
I'll
you
try to
have
lean a
almost
little
look at that.
Okay, can
So it is not a, thank you for the feedback. So it is not a summary place. I mean, you have to talk about your theory, methodology, and what is the gap. And second tip, which is very important, when you start scanning the literature, you can easily feel lost because there is a very large volume of scholarship produced in that area. To be more efficient, you should, maybe it would be better to get a habit of horizontal reading. So if it is a book, just quickly take a look at the table of contents. If it is a journal article, scan the abstract. So you can scan more examples, more research. And after you find your focus, you can make a vertical reading and it will facilitate your process and you will cover more research in that strategy. And the third one is evaluate your reading. Although the published research, they also throughout some peer review process, it doesn't mean that every published papers include very rigorous integrity, academic integrity. So you have to still be careful about reading the published articles. You should ask yourself, who has these claims? What are their authority? Always develop a habit checking the virtual bio of people, authors, first authors, or other people, and look at, is it accurate, objective, current, and what is the location of this research? It is so important. But usually after I finish my paper, I look at the table of references, bibliography, and I evaluate myself. Am I representing a diversity of scholars? Am I showing using a lot of Western scholars only? Do I include what is happening in the other countries? So it includes your reliability and integrity as well. And the next one, actually, for me, because I did a document analysis and analyze like 191 dissertation, the literature review part as well mainly consists on summary analysis and organization. So it would be wonderful to develop a habit of taking notes, keywords, some important codes. Usually I use Mendeley throughout my journey. It is very efficient. You can take notes, highlight, and search inside your notes. So it will be very efficient to find later what is happening, what kind of things you can include in your writing. Tip number 5. So we are supposed to be up to date, but sometimes older studies it might be foundational and very important there. So try to be balanced, including foundationals and current ones. Usually having a Google alert, creating a Google alert will be very easy in terms of knowing what is happening, something when published recently, and also use effectively the Boolean characters and or not in the library search. So these will facilitate your writing process a lot. Tip number 6. This is so important because although in our literature we provide our theoretical framework, it is still your voice. As an author and owner of the dissertation, you should include your voice in the center or front. So, I mean, usually I don't recommend using direct quotes, but it is so fundamental. Let's say you are writing something about Paula Freire and very foundational sentence should be there, it is okay. But usually try to use indirect voice. Do not have direct quotes and put your voice to the center or front. What I mean, I'm going to show you an example. For example, when I look at this paragraph, reds indicate the voice of the author, you, and synthesis of other voices, green, and the other voices. Usually for an effective paragraph, this is again my recommendation and some useful recommendation from the literature. Start with your own voice. What is your claim? The current diversity of the student population poses a great challenge to universities. And then include other people's voices to support your claim. It may be sometimes more than one person or one person. And at the end, try to finish the sentence paragraph with your own voice again. Sometimes I see some paragraphs. There is a sentence, and at the end of the sentence, a bunch of authors who said what part of the claim. It is so vague. And usually I don't recommend these kind of loaded voices. Try to use the balance, your own voice and other voices. It will increase your readability. And the next one is paraphrasing. This is another very important aspect. Although we all see plagiarism, actually there are other academic integrity types, and sometimes we can do it without unconsciously, like falsification. If you don't understand well as paper or a claim, you can misrepresent the work, and it might be another issue. Or fabrication, presenting speculation or general claims of others as if they were facts. Or sloppiness, not providing the correct citations. Nepotism, citing some scholars like your friends, your mentor, someone you like. So this is, again, a very important and serious issue like plagiarism, and we know plagiarism. So when you start paraphrasing, make sure that you understand those claims correctly. I mean, otherwise, if you put somebody's name to a claim, actually they don't mention, this is a important academic integrity violation.
Okay, it's okay. Or we're friends that work private site people are now. Really important to arrange these things up so you're aware of errors that you can take. And plagiarism happens also. These you know stuff so good because I had the same references as two papers, didn't say the same stuff. The computer flags it, it was not. Just really fabricating, we won't know this call it fabrication, but I'm still calling it. To do fabricating on this, they would tell the summer, the first two definitely don't find yourself in. The second and ones you could have happened and didn't. Third one, just have to recognize. Don't lie. And the fifth one, if it happens, people are very sensitive. I had a student of Wednesday, and he was trying to help a colleague in another country get published. And best attention go awry. In the area between that and obvious. The first good said, you just don't want to. You don't want to enter any of it. You know, Merve, you want
Just while paraphrasing device, think device, if this is really what the authors mean to say, and then that will be not a problem, I think. Yeah. So, I think it is a book, R795. Yes. And tip number 8, find a logical structure. After you scan the literature, what are we going to do? We will look for similarities, differences, who agrees and disagrees, what are the major questions unanswered, and what are the possible future directions might be. So you can start thinking about your future directions actually from the beginning, and it will help you to refine your research questions, even to design your research by if you start thinking about those issues from the beginning, it will be easier. And also based on these similarities, comparisons, sometimes your dissertation chapter, literature review chapter might be chronological, sometimes thematic, or sometimes methodological. There is no an exact rule. Again, it depends on your purpose. If providing a chronological structure will help you in a different way compared to the thematic one, so you can go with that. So it depends on your research questions, but these are some potential genres. And yes.
Your explanation earlier of nepotism and sloppiness, maybe you didn't, but here I just want to say that chronological can also mean historical. 1920, 1930, day, you know, or that's a similar term, chronological, but chronological could mean in terms of date published different when it was important. Anyway.
Exactly. And number 9, make use of feedback. As I said, it is a very long process, and sometimes you spend lots of time while writing. Therefore, you may not capture all inconsistencies, inaccuracies. So it will be great to ask a colleague, a trusted person, a mentor to read the literature review, and it will be very useful for you. And number 10 and last tip is revision. This is a snapshot from my dissertation folder, so it never ends. Just be open to revise it. My dissertation writing process took like 3 years because of my data, and also COVID, a lot of things happened. So I revised my literature a lot. Even after the data analysis, you can realize that you missed something, and it is okay to go back and change some sections, add external additional paragraphs, or remove some pieces. It's just open to revise it again and again. So, sure. Carrie asked that, when do you feel that you are done? Actually, you never that feeling. Even if after you finish submit and then think about submitting a journal, you still think that something is missing and you have to revise and modify and change it again. So it is a never-ending process, I think. But it is okay. It doesn't have to be completed. The purpose is the journey.
I will say that when you're done. Merve's right, you're never really done. But if you do a literature review and get it published as a literature review, you can always refer to that. And so I had that. One of my qualifying exam questions was published as a literature review. So, it was on social cognition and writing. Very specific topic. Then I knew it was because we had a lot. Normally, you always
Thank you for the question, Curt. So let's say you finish your literature review. And now let's move to the questions. What kind of questions are worth asking and why? So crafting a strong research question is so important. It is because you will define your research design, your data collection method, even data analysis. All of them are connected very strictly to your research questions. So usually the first tip is doing a preliminary research is very necessary to ask good questions. As you can just quickly search in Google, even Google Scholar, what are the current literature reviews, how people studied this particular area, and what kind of focus I can find for myself, what kind of problems exist, how I can contribute to the literature and overall knowledge production process. Therefore, I think in the IST program, the structure is in that way. You start with a bibliographic analysis, literature review, and you can kind of get a sense what is missing, what can I focus on. So the first step is performing a systematic literature review. And the second one, sometimes knowing what is happening in terms of technology and trends would also inform your research questions, especially for the instructional technology, educational technology. This is important. I'm going to give you an example from my postdoc. In one of my search, I learned that there are some cameras that can identify the heat, and so you can see some patterns in terms of room usage. And in my postdoc, I was studying how people use active learning classrooms during a class or informal areas like computer labs, how many times they actually use a technology or group collaboration tables, etc. So in order to provide empirical data, I need to count them. In one study, I did it manually. And in the second one, I realized this. Yes, it is recorded, Vanessa, by the way. I realized that those cameras can facilitate a lot my data collection process. And then my research question changed how we can make sense of teacher and student movement using the heat maps. I mean, in that case, knowing what is happening in terms of technology, especially in our field, they might help you craft better your research question. And so this is, I like ChatGPT. Without knowing what kind of features, algorithm, you can ask better questions when you know what is happening behind of it. Therefore, sometimes tools can inform your research question for our field. And numbers 3 to 7, I would like to talk about finer criteria. It stands for feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. It is a very good tool to evaluate the quality of a research question. Let me show you an example. This is a sample question. What is the most popular social media platform among high school students? Let's analyze this research question based on the finer criteria. For me, I don't know if you can read it. It's a little bit smaller. I'm going to read for you. Again, this is my analysis. As I said, feasibility deals with the limitations. What are the subjects? What are the technical resources? What kind of technology I need, time, money, these questions. So for this question, high school students, it is very broad and very difficult to implement. So for me, it is not exactly feasible. And in terms of being interesting, I just ask questions. What are the practical and theoretical implications of the most popular social media platforms among high school students? And in terms of novelty, I mean, if I look at the yearly reports of some social media platforms in their webpage, I can see some usage data, statistics. So I'm asking if it is really novel or not. I don't see any ethical issues because it has limited sentence. I cannot make a claim right now. And in terms of relevancy, after I find my answer, is it gonna fill a gap or is it gonna contribute a future research or overall scientific knowledge? So I think it couldn't pass finer criteria for me. And then let's try to revise it. What would be the best question in terms of meeting all these items? Like, how do different types of social media use impact academic performance among high school students in the USA? So now I have a more narrow focus and I have an academic performance dimension, so I can make it more interesting. And again, it might be very interesting study to see how video-based social media like TikTok or text-based social media platforms, Twitter, how they are making a difference in terms of students' critical thinking, creativity. I mean, you can collect data for both variables and it sounds interesting. As long as IRB approval is received, it is ethical and it might contribute to general scientific knowledge for educators, teachers, and students. So this is an example, brief example of finer criteria application. Do you have any questions before I move to the tip number 8? So tip number 8 then, if you don't have any questions, I'll move to 8. Usually start with an overarching question. It shouldn't include any terminology, any theories, just vary with lay terms. Like in this example, why do trainee teachers go about assisting pupils in the way what they do? It is very ordinary sentence. And then start with expanding that statement into groups. Like what they understand from assessment, what influence their understanding, how do they claim as assessment goals. So try to produce as much as possible from your initial question. And then at the end, you need to remove, categorize, and reconstruct all these initial ideas. And at that step, you can use concepts, terminologies, like in this example, what are pre-service teachers' conception of assessment? And second question, what might contribute to their conception of assessment? In a nutshell, try to brainstorm, create a narrow, broad claim, and then narrow it down, and it will help you to craft, to filter your question in a very good way. And finally, not finally, number 9, categorization is important. Maybe you can remember this picture at the beginning of my slides. I showed my dissertation research and I used 5 different questions. These categorization helped me to have 5 different analysis techniques and at the same time 5 different contributions to the field. Like in the first one, a definitional question, what are the meanings of educational technology researchers attached to educational technology, sometimes descriptive. What are the theoretical and methodological orientations of doctoral dissertations? It deals with patterns and trends. It might be sometimes interpretive, critical, and deconstructive. Just make sure that what kind of question you are asking, because it will define later your research design. And the final one is, again, feedback. I know and acknowledge that writing a dissertation includes a lot of complex layers, including psychological, motivational, mental, emotional, economic, a lot of complex layers. So in order to navigate all these factors, getting input from trusted friends, experts, mentors, this is so important and vital because you are so vulnerable, because you are dealing with a lot of variables. And even if let's say one scholar might be a phenomenal scholar in one area, if he or she is not knowledgeable in your field, again, the feedback may not be very constructive. So try to find the best resources and people who will contribute to you, because external motivation is very important for your intrinsic motivation. So I think this is one of my very personal recommendation for you. Getting feedback is important, but make sure who are giving you those feedbacks, because if you search online, you can see the doctoral attrition rates in the United States. It is very high, like 40 to 50% of people, doctoral candidates, never finish their dissertations because it is not an easy process. I'm giving these statistics just to acknowledge that it is a difficult process, but as long as you use your time, resources, connections in a balanced way, that will be easier. These are the references I used for some of suggestions. Sure. Thank you so much first.
I know most of you know Merve right now or about to, so you overlap, I'm sure, a bit with her. So if we go back to the beginning, so we've got Barbara, we've got Karen and Robert and Tuli and Sunmei in here, and Vanessa. What I'm going to ask you, the people remotely, to do is in the chat window, I want you to pick out 1 or 2 things that you got for doing a literature review and 1 or 2 things for forming research questions, and just type them into the chat window. You can talk to one another. I'm curious what you found to be beneficial. For the people who are in the room with me, we've got markers. We don't have, I didn't grab 2 stacks. I should have grabbed 2 stacks of markers. We got enough to get us started. So what I'd like to do is on the side wall here, I'd like for you to post in terms of literature reviews, something that you got in terms of literature reviews, and on the back wall, something you got related to research questions. So I've got a marker right here. And a couple of you got markers. Omida and Amani, you're going to share with each other. And I know that Patrick has a marker and Carrie has a marker and Jake has a marker. So there's almost enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Merve to go through the slides one more time so you can see them again and pay different attention to them. Just not fully through. We're just going to spend like 5 seconds per slide so you can see those slides. Is this one you're sharing on? Oh, you're sharing on that one. Okay. Okay, we're managing 3 different computers here, 1 for audio, 1 for video, and 1 to coordinate the system to project. So let's go back to the first slide, Merve, and just a couple seconds on each one so you can repeat them.
So these
And we'll post these slides to Dropbox. Let me just go back to it. So these are 10 Chester literature reviews. And I'm just going to run through this real quickly here. Again, you're identifying gaps in the literature, what doesn't exist or what only exists to a modest degree, and you need to fill those in with your model, with your framework, with your unique variables that you're studying. And she pointed out what a literature review is not. Okay, I'll let you look at that for a second. And what your focus should be when you read. Read with and for a purpose, right? You want to comment there? You all should be squirrels, stacking acorns and nuts up, just reading horizontally and once in a while going to depth before the winter hits. Evaluate what you've looked at. What are the sources? Are they credible? Are they reliable? Are they relevant to what you're trying to do? Are they accurate? Are they current? And so forth. Then summarize what you found and organize it into lists, into stacks. Those stacks that you form, if all the articles are extremely important. Nowadays, the stacks are virtual. When I did my dissertation, stack was on stacks of paper. I still use stacks of paper. It's hard to organize things, a sort of circle and highlight and bullet things that are digital, but you can do those too. So make note of quotes. Those come in handy. Yeah, I'll talk about that. We have a quote break. Look for key points. Look for common themes across different authors and so forth, and find ways to manage it, whether using Mendeley or some other resource tool. Again, Merve pointed out that older articles are important. In the field of IST, we often think anything older than 2 years old is too old, but it's not. If you're in my 511 class, a lot of stuff is 30 and 40 years old. It's the base knowledge that we're building upon, but yet still we need to move ahead. We need to progress. So you need to build on the current stuff as well, and then find your voice within that. So what can you say? What are you doing that's different? What's unique? Don't take too many steps forward. If you're trying to dictate where the field should go into your first study, that's being a little bit arrogant, a little egotistical. It's not until you've done 3 or 4 or 5, 6 or 10 studies that you can reflect back on where we've gone. You have to be humble in doing a dissertation, humble to those that have come before you, as well as those studying and proceeding with you at the present time. Some peers you're working with might have similar studies, in fact. And then she pointed out how you can create a voice through the first sentence that you post in a paragraph, and then start citing other people's work and other references and so forth. We elaborate on this caution when paraphrasing. As I said, sloppiness, nepotism, and plagiarism happen. They do happen to me. They happen to my colleagues, but they can be fixed. You might be going to bed at night, Karen or Vanessa, and saying, I'll just put any reference down. I just need a reference. And when you wake up, you probably should change it. You're sloppy. I get sloppy late at night. I just wanted to get something in there. But I'll change it. You flag it in certain colors. You might bold it. You might annotate it. You comment on it. You want to make sure you don't get caught for plagiarism. Don't get caught for sloppiness. But sometimes it's okay to start there. It's like using Wikipedia to start, and you find the sources. It might be okay to cite your advisor, especially if I'm your advisor. No. It might be okay to cite your advisor, even if he or she doesn't have the relevant article. It gets you started. Starter text is extremely important, but you have to flag it so in the end you don't use it, right? But don't do falsification. Don't do fabrication. Avoid the F words. There are other F words you can avoid too. Find out, this is one I didn't become good at early on in my career, looking for the logical structure in my document, and this is extremely important, as Merve said, it has to flow somewhere. We have to make sense of it. The reader has to form a gist. They have to form the abstract in their head, and they can't do it if you're all over the place, cutting back and forth. You want to comment on it? Oh yeah, chronological. So you can present your review in a chronological fashion, historical fashion, a methodological in terms of the methods that you're going to utilize in your study or employ, or the themes, the common themes, especially qualitative, or those that you're citing qualitative research. And then make use of your peers. They're good for feedback. Your advisors, your colleagues. Even technology can read your paper back to you, and that's good form of feedback too. Often, I learn a lot. There's research on this when you have a technology read, speech to text kinds of things, and there are some that are free, some tools that are not, but usually they have a free version of it. And as she probably had 3 more pages of revision she's not showing you here. This is just to exemplify that. Don't worry if you're making changes. Everyone does. Just make sure you have a coding system for those changes. So you're putting, March 7th at 10 p.m., March 7th at 11 p.m., March 7th at 11:30 p.m., March 8th at 1 a.m., so we know what the last version was that you were working on, or you'll know. And I always recommend saving, I go stash B. So I have a backup to my regular version because I often will overwrite paper. When I go to change it again, I will make a mistake and just overwriting the previous version. And if I have to go back and find something I deleted or changed, it's gone. That's gone forever. So I always save 2 copies. Okay. And then I always try and send when I go to bed, I try to send a copy to myself in my email in case my computer dies, or to the cloud or somewhere. And then she had 10 tips for forming research questions. You want to add anything to what I've said so far? Okay. I was listening a little bit. So, we all have a logical structure in mind when, we're thinking about our literature review and research questions. And, you might form a bibliographic review of the research. You might not do a meta-analysis. That's kind of technical, but you could. Some people do. You might do a scoping review, or as Vanessa said, or a systematic review of the research and find out what's out there. Just, dig in deep. This is where the squirrel becomes a bear and goes deep into the woods. You're not just surface skimming anymore. You're now really trying to figure out what the literature is saying. And the graphic here, you oftentimes will be pointing to things that other people have extended the journey in the research field that no one else has seen, because no one has done the deep dive that you've done. If it's a really unique dissertation, you're doing something that no one else has done in terms of the intersection of 2 or more concepts. So like the study that I published from my qualifying exam, I was looking at social cognition and writing and perspective taking and audience awareness kinds of things. And so a lot of people looked at social cognition as important to child development. A lot of people look at writing and audience awareness, but tying the 2 things together, not too many people had done. And my other qualifying exam was cooperative reading programs. A lot of people look at cooperative learning and what's happening out there, but not many people were looking at cooperative learning and reading. Cooperative learning, math, maybe. So they were unique, and that's the way your literature review could get you structured. In fact, and then we're constantly reading and evaluating on the daily news and articles and research, new announcements. Special issues. As I said, my special issue came out last week. Merve had an article in that. You should be looking at those when at least saving an article or 2. You don't read them all, not read them all, but keeping up with current trends, attending webinars, going to colloquia, going to symposium, that kind of thing. And then using the finer criteria. Is this a feasible research question, or are you trying to do too much? I think half of you in this room and half of you online, we're not posing feasible questions in week 1 and week 2 and week 3. It wasn't until we got to week 4 that you start getting things a little more feasible. You start more grandiose. All of us do when we have a research idea. So they're really not on the front end. You might think it's important to you, but you have to, narrow it down. Usually narrowing it down is the hardest part. Figure out where the base core is for your ideas. Interesting, whether it's interesting or not, well, it doesn't have to be interesting to everyone else. It should be interesting a little bit to you so you can be passionate about it. Hopefully it's interesting to a wider audience, but sometimes the audience might be very narrow in scope. And it might be a little different. Like Jake's audience, working with people in the State Department, is different than most students in IST who are working with teachers or might be working with students. His audience is different. So when he talks about his study here at IU, there might not be as many interested people as when he talks to people at work in his work. There may be tons of interested people, or when he goes to a conference and other government officials are coming from Vermont and from Montana, he'll have them all come. They'll be in droves coming into the room to hear what he has to say, but he might not get the same kind of feedback from the folks here in IST. I'm just guessing, Jake, but in terms of novelty, we all want novelty, uniqueness. The novelty can come in an image, can come in a title, can come in, a methodology that you use. You might utilize a new instrument. You might design an instrument. You might modify an existing instrument, which is a better idea than creating an instrument, adapt and modified, by, weighing 23, so, novelty is good. Ethics, yeah, we should be ethical at all times, but, on the surface, she said, well, the social knowing about social media being used in high schools, not an ethical issue. It could be an ethical issue today in the TikTok world, where we're banning TikTok from all students and how they're getting around it. I mean, social media is replete with ethical dilemmas. How do teachers use it? Do they ban it? Do administrators ban it? How are names shared? Personal data is being accessed and all sorts of things. And then relevant. Is it relevant to IST colleagues? Is it relevant to the other disciplines? What you're doing going to be picked up on the news media? One of my former students was contacted by CBS News in Detroit, and she said, "So what do I do?" Well, they're finding it, relevant to a broader audience. What you're doing here, potentially. So, I've been contacted by media, and I know then when. Sometimes I don't want to be contacted by media. I don't think I have anything at all to say that's important and all that, but it might be relevant to folks that you weren't thinking about initially, and you'll may be contacted after you're published by other young scholars who might want to replicate what you're doing. So being clear about your study design and being inclusive as you can is very, very important. Being very clear about the steps you took, very, very clear about how you got your subjects. A lot of students today are not putting a lot into how they got their subject access. And I had a talk a couple weeks ago, 20 ways to get data. I also had a presentation here, 10 or 20 ways to communicate with your committee. Today, I'm going to give you 20 ways you can mess up. No, kind of like that. Anyhow, so I've gone back through Merve's points here. I think she had one more, Merve. Yeah. She is supposed to questions. Tip number 8, be clear and well defined on your objectives. Messed up. You want to repeat what this one is? It keeps moving ahead. I'm not even touching. I don't think that our virtual people might not have heard that. Put down your knowledge claims and just start with that, very short knowledge claims, and then work with them repeatedly and expand on them, interconnect them, branch off into different things. Oops. 3 computers here. And then, are your questions, the kind, I don't want to pick on Jake again, but in his dossier too, he had a lot of what questions I asked him. So very descriptive in nature that he was looking at. And I think a couple of his proposed questions for his dissertation were what question. Then he had one overarching that was really complex. So some things might be definitional in nature. I know some of you have to create glossaries for the terminology that you're using. And we just yesterday were meeting with an IST student who we told put it all in a glossary. It's very important because your audience will understand all the acronyms that you're using. They mean different things to different people. Some questions might be social critical in nature, looking at, what happens at a societal level. Some might be interpretive. And it said others are definitional or descriptive. And finally, again, seek input, seek feedback from others, seek input from others, talk to others, share with others. I'm going to come back to that sharing point. This is extremely important because if you're just one-off, a lone ranger working alone in a one-off study, in effect, it's not going to be a happy situation for you. You're going to just want to get done and move on with your life. But if you have someone to talk to about it, if you might create a blog, one of my students created a blog and he updated his progress every day. So he had friends helping him around the world, giving him feedback. Oh, that sounds great. You're doing good. Now, he took 7 years to do his dissertation. Don't take 7 years, but I'll explain. He's one of my 20 examples, and I'll explain what he's doing now. Yeah, he's in there somewhere. So those are the 10 things. What I'd like for you to do, again, the people remotely, go back through which of those tips did you resonate with and why? So chat, just in the chat window, we won't go to breakout teams because of the constraints that we have here, but just in the chat window and people in the room here, and we'll try and get so if everyone could stand up with a marker, and that wall will have, I say, literature review, and that back wall research questions. So. Barbara, I'll answer your question after this activity. That's a good question. And Paula has a question I'll answer after this activity. And Robert has a question I'll answer after this activity. Good. Cool, Bonk. Do we have the chat open? So can we stop sharing? There we go. And I will pause the recording just so there's not a lull in here, but I will pause the recording. And again, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's a little complicated, this room. Again, if we move this before, people are going there. Merve found us kind of complicated here. And yeah, I'll call up my slides if I find them. There are my slides. So, okay, I'm going to stop that. I'm just going to pause this for a second. I'll be right back in about 3 minutes. So hang on. If you need to take a break for 3 or 4 minutes, you can. Then I'll come back and field your questions. This is resuming the recording. And we've got several questions coming on the side here. Are you going to say, or you have to go? You have to go. Thank you, Merve. You'll find Merve in the library working on a grant. We have questions that have come in on the chat window. One question has to do what's the difference between an EDD and a PhD dissertation. There are many differences. Among those differences is you need only 3 members of a committee for an EDD and 4 members on a PhD. Back where I went, we needed 5 members for a PhD. But anyways, at IU, you need 4 members for a PhD and 3 members for an EDD. That's one difference. Another difference is the course that you have to take. There are additional statistics classes that PhD students take in particular. And then the third is the scope of the dissertation itself, which is the finer differentiation. The one you most widely mentioned is the EDD dissertation. Okay. And I'll have to talk to you about how to redo this, what we did to get this to work. We may try this again with Dr. Hitchcock in a couple of weeks using this room. So we'll see. The third and main differentiation, Barbara, is that the EDD is work related, maybe more on the evaluation side, more job related than a PhD dissertation is more theoretically related and pushing the field ahead. The scope or the audience for a PhD would be different, and its contribution would be in a EDD might be more local or might be more discipline specific. A PhD might be related to, could be related to any disciplines. It's more theoretical in nature, trying to push a concept, a model, a framework, or a theoretical understanding. There are other questions that came in on the side. Does anyone want to state their, we might be able to hear you. I'm not sure if we can. Does anyone have a question remotely? Any remotes?
So Robert, valuable. On the planet. Very true.
Can you hear me now? Yes, no, thumbs
Yes,
up?
I can. Yes.
Okay. I have to look right at my machine. If someone could bring the books up, I could lift this a little higher, just a couple of those books there. I wouldn't have to look down so much. I have yeah. That little one, you know, let me try this. I could probably sit here. I've used this room in the past many times. My computer, there's that glare in my eyes again. My computer requires one to look right at the machine. I can't look up at the audience in the room here too much. But anyways, I'll do my best. Again, I appreciate you bearing with us for all the technical glitches, but it's just be nice to be in a room with students for the first time all year. I mean, and really, it's kind of gotten weird since the pandemic. And it just, to me, a lot of times it doesn't feel like the same place. You know, before the pandemic, we had a Fulbright grant, huge one with teachers, award-winning teachers from a bunch of countries, from Finland, New Zealand, India, Botswana, Singapore, Mexico, Morocco, and they were all in this room. Amani and Ibrahim, remember, we had all these people from around the world. This room we're in holds 50 maximum. We had 55 sometimes in this room, with about 20 visiting scholars from China, sometimes more than that. It was just 5 years ago. It's just so awesome to be teaching in this room, and it's just changed. Everything's changed, partly because of the pandemic and other factors. So again, I've used this room before. It's tricky. I'm glad it's working again somewhat. Thanks for posting on the walls in here, by the way. I'm going to go to my slides. It's a brand new talk that I created today. And I did this talk on communicating with your advisor, and this is all in, you know, how to communicate with, you know, and I had 10 tips about how to get people to meet and coordinate and communicate, and how to, you know, summarize the meeting, and how to inform your committee if things change and all that kind of stuff. I talking about delays and problems. This is all sending thank you notes and so forth. I went through that a couple of weeks ago with all of you. And then I had one on collecting data, 20 ways to get a dissertation data. I went through this. This is also in Dropbox, so you can get this one on how to utilize existing center data, institute data, how to get your advisor to kind of inform you what's possible, how to use government data, which Jake is probably doing, how to conduct pilot studies before the main study, how to use computer log data, all this kind of things. Those are some. I'm not going to go through this one, but anyhow, that's another talk that I gave. So this is a third or fourth talk of 20 ways. Let me go to the third one, if I can find it. So I just finished this at 5 after 5, like 20 minutes before getting here in this room. Driving like a madman. Hopefully you weren't on the road and didn't hit you. And so in my pocket, I've got a bunch of student names, all these names for all these names of stories that they would have. And I got a teaching award. I had to put all the students that were with me my first 10 years of teaching, from 89 to 99, and their dissertation topics. So I stole from this today. I didn't memorize all their dissertations. So you'll see the names of their dissertations and the year they graduated. I got that from here, not from my brain, anyhow. Some of these ideas may not work in your situation. Some things change over time. So let me go to the first one, and I'm going to get rid of my panel in front of me here. So hide video panel. There we go. So many of you panic about getting committee members. Who will serve on your committee? I have not seen a student yet that couldn't find enough members to serve. Don't stress about it, but don't overstress. Do worry about it. Have that. Who are you going to get? Because it's important who you get on your committee. They have to gel together. The more they gel, those members gel with one another, the more likely you'll have an easier time in passing. Really seriously, I hate to put it that way, but you ask your advisor who they like to work with. It's really important. You get the people that will fit with what you are expecting. What are you going to be doing or working on? So in 1989, before some of you were born, my first year as a faculty member, someone was walking the hallway. She was a nursing student looking for an ed psych person who was interested in critical thinking. I was in my second month. She found me. She was defending in December. She lost a committee member for some reason. They moved, they went to another university, and she was studying critical thinking, which nurses tend to do. Nurses are very interested in critical thinking and psych kinds of things. And she stumbled upon me, and therefore I appeared. And that was my first dissertation defense. It was on the effect of intensive instruction on inquiry patterns of registered nurses in making clinical judgments. So the little quote here, some people appear in your life when you most need them. They love you, they lift you up, reminding you of you're the best, even when you're going through the worst. These people are not just your friends, they are your earth angel. Your earth angel will show up as your fourth member, your dissertation, your third member. They will appear. Trust me. I've not seen someone who didn't get their third or fourth member. Sometimes it's kind of a lucky break. And it was a good thing for me too, to serve on a dissertation. And next one. Mike Mulvaney. Mike Mulvaney was in Southern Pennsylvania, and he and I studied concept mapping and the impact of summary writing on thinking. And we found an impact. He taught business management in university like Southern Pennsylvania. Waynesburg University is where he was at. And Mike University, Waynesburg, adopted writing across the curriculum. And, writing across the curriculum was a popular thing in the 80s and 90s, the process approach to writing as thinking. And so he said, well, I'll just study that. I'll look at writing across the curriculum in my business management class. So sometimes you have to take advantage of trends. Sometimes you have to take advantage of trends. The research that we did on summary writing and the impact of writing on thinking and concept mapping, we never published. I had a lot of problems in my early days. I never published some stuff. I don't have better research. It's never been published. But we got Mike done. He finished his dissertation. He was smart about it. Study what people are interested in at his university. Third thing, again, something just popped up. When I showed up as a new faculty member, all of a sudden the Berlin Wall came down. And one of my students walked into my office. His name was Laura Van Voris. And Laura says, I think I should go to Lithuania and ask them about their definitions of democracy. And I said, this is pretty cool. This is a great, here I am, a new faculty member, and I'm getting critical thinking ones and writing this thinking. It was my areas of writing. And, democracy in Lithuania and looking at, the old Iron Curtain, what's going on in all these Eastern European countries and in the stands as well, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan and so forth. So, yeah, her study was transformative teachers' lives and passions. So she interviewed teachers about democracy and what it means, and there in Lithuania and across. This is in Berlin there, that picture. Then I had a student. I wrote to this student today. I found her in LinkedIn. She's not been in LinkedIn recently. I found Nina. Nina took my class, my Saturday class. Back then it was on Saturdays. It was on, creative thinking, critical thinking, cooperative learning. And we taught the jigsaw method in the student teams achievement division, STAD. And she goes, I want to use these K-12 methods with college students. And she did. And, a lot of students would be hesitant to use K-12 kinds of things with college students, but they worked. Jigsaw method worked splendidly. The STAD did as well, competitive kind of cooperative learning methodology to teach microcomputer applications, which was the course that she was teaching. And so, you have to step out of the norms and step out of the discipline you're in and think outside the box. She was thinking outside the box, and that led her to her dissertation. The first day I got to IU, I got on the elevator. Many of you might have heard this story before me. I told it at the 30-year anniversary of the School of Ed. we had a few months back. My first ride on the elevator, they were taking the tape off the elevators. Literally in the August of 1992, they were opening the building when I arrived. When Professor Bowling and I arrived when the building opened up, basically. And Sonny Kirkley, our keynote from Friday, same thing, and his wife, 1992 in August. Well, the guy on the elevator coming behind me on the elevator, his name was Richard Stewart. And Richard said, "You're the new Ed Psych guy, and you're interested in writing, I heard. How'd you like to be on my dissertation?" This is my first 5 minutes in the building. I got someone asking me to be on this dissertation, okay? And I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Richard Stewart." "So what you studying?" "Well, I'm studying Jungian archetypical images. When people meditate at night and they think about these archetypal primordial images that reflect some common pattern to all of humanity. And I'm going to have expert writers wake up at midnight, they hit their alarm or 1 a.m. and write about whatever they visualize at that moment. And they have to meditate. They're going to wake up at 1 o'clock there and meditate. And we're going to talk about what these expert writers write about. I said, "Oh, cool. Indiana's a great place. I'm really glad I came here. I'll have all these dissertations about primordial images and Jungian archetypes." This will be for the last 31 years, there's not been another dissertation like it. This is the only, time I had this happen. I was interested. I'm a psychology major. I was interested in Carl Jung and what he had to say about, the macro structure of the universe. And, so sometimes you can find your committee on an elevator. Meditation, twilight imagery, and the individualization of creative writing. Number 6, Dr. Renee Kong is famous in Korea, but she wasn't always famous. And she was one of my first doctoral students in IST. I was an adjunct in IST. Since then, she wrote a book on constructivism and on problem-based learning. And she's, in effect, a celebrity in Korea for her work on constructivism and PBL. I don't know, you two. She worked at Kyunghee University and recently retired from Kyunghee University. Well, she had collected data on an associate instructor AI training program. And she didn't have her literature review written when she did her dissertation proposal meeting, or it wasn't written the quality that we wanted. And there was a professor in Ed Leadership and Policy Studies named Harbans Bola. And Harbans said to her, he said, let's work backwards. What you've got is a critical, we can work from critical theory back to your dissertation data. So he put on the wall, he just walked her through the whole dissertation process for her. He's the 4th member of her dissertation. He was the outside minor member. And he knew more about what her dissertation meant than any of the 3 IST, or we had 2 IST people and me, I was Ed Psych / IST. And so he was magical. Harbans was a super smart guy. He recently passed away at age 87 or something like that. Just a brilliant guy. And he worked working backwards sometimes from your dissertation data. You're not supposed to collect your dissertation data before you defend. She is an exception. It shows that sometimes exceptions are made to the rules. A lot of faculty like stating what the rules are. I like stating what the exceptions are. And so just keep that in mind. Some dissertations are theoretically deep and extend theory. I had a student named Deborah Hockstrait Cooney, who studied aspects. Aspects enabled collaborative writing. It was better than Google Documents at the time. You could have multiple people working on the same document in 1990, as long as they were working on the same sentence. They could have images, they could have text, timelines, all sorts of cool stuff. It was developed at Duke University. Well, Deb studied CSCL, Computer Supported Collaborative Learning, which was my old area. I was in CSCL before the learning science people kicked me out. So they took over and kicked me out of Ed Psych to IST. I was very interested in CSCL and the impact of writing on thinking. And Deb was pushing the field ahead. And she ended up with a chapter in my book. So sometimes what you're working on for a dissertation just fits the time. The timing is good and you can get published and so forth. Number 8, give faculty time to read. And John Graves, who's going to be a guest in my other class in a couple of weeks, when he handed me my first student to finish, my first advisee, he sat outside my office until I finished it. He was that hyped about finishing and getting done and so forth. Give your faculty 1 month to read the dissertation. You should. A proposal, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe sometimes a week, but a dissertation should be a month. You should announce it a month ahead. Be careful when citing yourself. John Savory, my good friend John, I tell this story many, many, many times. John did research on problem-based learning with Dr. Tom Duffy, a former faculty member, and his dissertation on fostering student ownership in a learner-centered instructional environment was done in the School of Business. He studied and did qualitative research on these teams that were formed in the School of Business, having different management communication letters, business communication letters. They had the accounting team, the marketing team, and he studied that. The problem was that John cited his own work in his literature review and didn't cite much else. And at the end of his dissertation, he flunked. And the students, we used to require all students had to attend 3 or 4 dissertations a semester. Room 2277 was packed with students, and they all left in tears. They were crying. And they was, we'll never have Dr. Duffy on our committee. We'll never have Dr. Cunningham on our committee. We'll never have Dr. Bonk on our committee. Those jerks, all 3 of them. Will never, never, never. They pushed that poor guy, and they were all crying. John, on the other hand, he was a returning adult student. John wasn't crying at all. John knew he could fix it. It would take him a little while. He had moved to Denver and didn't have a library close by, so he couldn't do a literature review properly. And he tried to footnote his literature review. That didn't work. John revised his dissertation. He got outstanding dissertation award from the whole School of Ed. He had the best dissertation. We knew we could push him. His zone of proximal development was pushable. We could push beyond. We knew he could handle it. The other students in the room, they couldn't handle what we did in that room. But it wasn't a quality dissertation either. We knew we couldn't pass them. So sometimes we nudge, we prompt, we provoke a little bit. Number 10, Erping Zhu, good friend of mine. She got her first job at University of Houston, Clear Lake, and then went to Gulf Coast University in Florida. She was one of the first faculty members there where they don't have tenure. Okay. She ended up leaving there and going to Michigan and instructional design, where Ahmad is, and his wife Victoria. Some of you know Ahmad. So she was at one of Michigan's teaching and learning centers till last summer. She finally retired. Her dissertation, hypermedia interface design, the effects of the number in links of granularity of the nodes on learner information search and performance. Dr. Marty Siegel came to that room and he asked her one question. He said, "So what?" Okay, so what? You will get 60% of you will get the so what question. Be prepared for the so what question. Not everybody will get it, but probably more than half of you. Somebody on your committee will raise the so what question. And she had a pretty good answer. But what was interesting, a couple years later, Nicholas Carr had a book. It was read by a lot of people, called The Shallows. And it was about the massive information that we're facing in society today. The Shallows, how the internet is changing the way we think, read, and remember. The impact of the internet on our minds. Erping's dissertation was cited in that book. Okay? The only dissertation I've been on who have been cited in a book I've read. Even though, we were questioning her at the dissertation defense, is this important? It was important. It was extremely important. People were picking up and reading books and citing. And this book sold, it was a bestseller in the New York Times list. Okay, this is not a small book. Nicholas Carr is a very famous guy, a book writer. Should be number 11, not 110. Again, this is brand new. Faculty can play intellectual footsie. Lori Nelson, who went off to Utah for a while, she's still in Utah. She did a theoretical dissertation. She was one of the smartest students ever in the IST department, but faculty, some of them didn't believe in theoretical dissertations. And I could see, she did her dissertation defense from a distance. She had maybe moved to Utah. I can't remember exactly. She did her dissertation defense through video conferencing. And she couldn't see what I saw. I saw the faculty picking each other intellectually under the table. They didn't agree with her. 2 faculty didn't like her proposal. and one was her advisor. I was kind of stuck in between. Which side do I go with? And when it came time to defend it, two faculty on the committee didn't really like theoretical dissertations and didn't want to pass her on a theoretical dissertation. Okay, she was forming a new model of computer-supported collaborative learning, structural theory for group-based collaborative problem solving. Yeah, she eventually passed. She had to make major revisions. Very smart person, but because she didn't see them playing intellectual footsie, that she ran into problems. Number 12, make sure your faculty really approve. Noriko Hara, who's now a faculty in informatics in our School of Library Information Science and department chair, and my good friend, Noriko came to graduation in 1999, and her parents came from Yokohama, Japan. And I was the MC of the event, the host. And I had her parents stand up. Everyone was clapping. Her parents were very proud in the back of the room. And she hadn't defended yet. She was about to defend. And came time to defend, she flunked. Because she had two advisors, one in informatics, social informatics, a very famous guy named Rob Kling, and her advisor, Tom Schwen, who was the department chair in ISD. And they didn't agree about the scope of her research. And she studied public defender's office, like legal people, the community of practice. And she studied in Bloomington. And they just asked her to do the same study in Indianapolis, where there's more technology. So in effect, she had to do two dissertations. She actually got a book out of it. She was Springer Publishing. She's very smart, but Noriko had to do two dissertations. Make sure your committee really approves what you think they approved. I'm giving you some of the worst case scenarios today. So her dissertation, social construction of knowledge in professional communities of practice scales in the courtroom. Number 13, Wen Hao Huang. Wen Hao is a very good friend of mine, and his wife and his daughter might come to IU next year, I think. They've been writing me. He did a dissertation, formative research on the refinement of web-based instructional design and development guidance system for teaching music fundamentals at a pre-college level. He was studying IU Music School, top music school in the country, and looking at how music can be taught online. He was ahead of the game. He was a decade ahead, at least, of what's been going on. The problem he had, a very famous advisor, probably shouldn't say, but he's known for his green books and so forth. He didn't tell his advisor or remind him when he was defending. His advisor wasn't at his defense. He was still sleepy. We had to call home and I'll wait about a half hour for his advisor to show up. Now, this happened. I've been on 125. I've never missed a dissertation until last semester. I missed one. I was working until 3 a.m. and they put it in the Google, the Outlook, my Outlook. I don't check my Outlook. I got a paper planner. I got 2 of them. I checked this and I didn't see anything on there. The person didn't send a reminder. So make sure you send reminders 3 days in advance and the night before. Send 2 reminders, okay? You don't want this to happen. Number 14, Sunny Kirkley, who presented our keynote last week. I don't have his exact title in here, but he studied augmented reality and military training. And he got he hit the limit. Both he and his wife, she double majored. She has 2 PhDs. They both extended their time. You can actually get an extra few weeks. So if you don't count on the extra few weeks, but if you hit the 7 years that you have to dissertate, they actually, if you're almost done, they can find you a couple more weeks. I think it's maybe 4 total. And I've had several use that so he was actually, that day he had to defend or he was out, he wouldn't be able to do it. And he studied augmented reality in the military in 20 years ago. He was looking at augmented reality stuff. So, very cool stuff. And one person on his committee, I can't say who it is, wanted him to make major changes. And he had literally 10 hours available to him. One of his advisors convinced the other person on the committee that didn't have major changes and got him through. So, number 15, try not to do 2 dissertations. My first graduate student in EdPsych, I mentioned the other guy from John Graves, who waited till he was done. My first doctoral student took 14 years, 7 years of coursework, 7 years of dissertating. Took him 7 years of coursework. His mother died and his wife left him, and so he was kind of distraught. So it took him 7 years. Then he developed a simulated school, like corporate like really hefty, good stuff like this here. It took him a long time to develop a simulated, they're called Sim Teacher or Sim School or something like that. And it was wonderful, but it took him a long time. And when he finished, he decided to become a flight attendant on Southwest Airlines so he could run marathons in every city. So, so you never know. So creating software is a dissertation. Don't create software if you can help it. Now, I created software, a computer prompting system and a keystroke mapping system that was kind of easy to do within Word or WordPerfect, but don't do something that's really hard to create, because that's a whole that's like a, find existing software to use or existing instruments to use and modify, but you don't want to do 2 dissertations. Number 16, don't be afraid to talk to your peers. I just got an email from Guoping Ma. She's at Microsoft. She's got a nice job at Microsoft. We're going to chat after class here. I told her we'll talk. She finished just with a couple days to go. She went off to Microsoft and worked and didn't work on a dissertation until she had to finish. And she didn't talk to her colleagues. There were 2 other people in IST studying the same topic, but they thought because the dissertation is individual work, you couldn't work with another student to collect articles or to share abstracts. You can share whatever you want with someone else. You can collect articles with other people. You should. We had 3 people studying communities of practice and no one wanted to talk to each other. It would have been much more efficient if they had, created a database of articles somewhere, They all had different topics. They all had different aspects of community of practice. It's okay to talk to your peers. It's okay to get their feedback. You don't have to be alone in a shell somewhere, is my point, okay? Her study was online communities, learning communities in the context of distance ed, a case study. And for those of you from Korea, Jungwon Her studied communities practice of Korean teachers with Neighbor, online community for teacher training. Anyways, so you might. Anyways, some people face tragedies. Manjari Singh's father passed away in the midst of dissertating. And she was embedded with young women, teenage women in India, in southwestern India, near Pakistan. She was really devoted to doing this study. She lived with these girls for a year and studied them, looking at the social cultural aspects of the teacher training program. It's a wonderful dissertation. But then she got depressed because her father passed away. And that happened to several of my students. There's another one each of these, I had to literally walk their dissertation across campus with 45 minutes to spare. She wrote 300 pages in 1 week when she got off her medication. The last week, she had all these quotes though that she put in. She knew it all. She knew it all. When the barrier came down, she was brilliant. She's literally a brilliant person. But Manjari was, had different personal I mess up something here? So Mainnet collected extra data. I'm trying to see if did I mess up? Can you guys still see my slides? I'm almost done. I got 1 or 2 left here. So for some reason, this came up here. Okay, there we go. So sometimes you have to collect extra data, and she collected instructor data for a dissertation, and then student data was extra that we didn't report in a dissertation, but she published it. So sometimes you want to collect a little extra. And let's say you're setting up to do a study, one of your committee members said, you don't need that data. You could talk to your advisor after and say, I'm still interested in collecting it. Let's just collect it on the side, maybe, and ask your advisor if he or she will publish it with you. If not, it's okay. And you can just publish it. But you can always collect extra data and not report it. No one cares, you just get the human subject's approval, right? Let's see if I can get to the next slide. Try to get your committee members, try to agree with your committee members. I had 13 dissertation defenses this past year in 2022. That's more than I ever had before in my life. One person didn't agree with her dissertation committee members on what she had to change. and almost didn't pass because she wouldn't agree with do anything. Don't be one of those, don't, I didn't put her name up here, but, if sometimes you disagree, you can disagree politely. For my advice is try and agree to several things and then point out the item that you don't totally agree with or are confused about or want explanation of or want to understand the purpose of it. First, do the easy stuff and then go to the hard. Don't start off right away if it's, I'm not going to do it. That person doesn't understand my dissertation. That person doesn't, why are they making me do this? And don't be, just, you save yourself a lot of stress and just, you don't want to just bow to your committee members. You don't ever want to bow and genuflect, but you want to be cordial, try and be it's a team that you've formed on your committee and be a good team player. That's where you're going to, sometimes you need to collect less data. So this is the one student that didn't finish. His name is Kwame Dakwa. Kwame was from Ghana. He was a star on the IU track team. He was a star on my baseball team. So Kwame and I are good friends. I really wanted Kwame to finish. So much, I'll explain. Kwame studied teacher reform in Ghana. And he had 3 sites he was going to in Ghana. And he was in Ghana. He had the first 2 done. The third one he went to. And he wrote me an email, says, Dr. Bonk, I don't think I can do the third part. And I said, well, Kwame, why not? And you're probably good enough with 2 parts, two school districts, 2 regions. You're good enough problem. The third region, the ruling person in that region had his head chopped off. I said, you don't want to go to region 3. You got enough data. So he came back, he's writing his whole dissertation up, and Graduate Studies Office found that he didn't complete 1 class. He had an incomplete, and it was already past his 7 years of statute. So he had to go back and revalidate all sorts of courses, and then that didn't work. And he ended up entering the EDD program in IST instead of the EdPsych PhD, and he didn't finish. I really feel bad because he was almost done with a dissertation, and some paperwork mess up happened. I had another student who finished after 20 years last year, a year and a half ago, the same month Merve defended. He started in 2001. He finished in 2021. Met his wife in the computer lab in IST, had teenage kids, but he didn't take his minor qual. And so he couldn't proceed to a dissertation. And now we no longer require a minor qual or whatever. And so paperwork, make sure you got all the dots and all the ducks in a row and all the things signed off that you need to have signed, because sometimes that can cause problems or dilemmas. So those are the 20 that I wanted to present tonight. I know some of those are kind of sad stories, but at the end of the first 19, all finished. Only 1 did not finish from the list. So, I mean, it's, very, very, very rare that and often, to be honest, when I see people who don't get done, it's usually due to personal issues, not professional ones. They want to, the committee wants them to finish. It's usually not. I've only had 1 truly where the committee did not pass and that person didn't deserve to pass. Of 125, some I've been on. I've had only 2 which finished with no revisions. And 1 was last year at this time. Amani has a question. Amani, I'll stop the sharing here if I can find it. Oh, hang on a second. I think we lost the sharing on the last couple of slides. Okay, hang on. Let me just put the last, just so you can see the last couple of slides. That's the last slide with Kwame's slide. And yeah, we lost you right there, I think. So those are the last 3 slides of Maine. I think this is the last one you saw. I don't know why it cut off. Apologies. For people watching this later, at least you see what the slides had on them. Anyways, Amani has a question. Amani. How many years does it take? So if they come with a master's, 1. It's usually about 4 years that they come with a master's. Oh, that's the goal, is to get done in 4 years, to come with a master's. Could be soon, could be quicker than that. Without a master's, can be 4 to 5 years or 6, actually. Yeah, whole program, finish a master's and the dissertation. Yeah, the whole thing, yeah. As I said, I had one that did 20. I had one that did 14, another one did 16. You don't want to be those people. None of you are going to be in that camp. Sunmei's going to defend in 2 months. Tully's going to defend in about 6 months. I don't know. Right, Tully?
Yes, probably in the spring or summer.
Great. Okay, I can hear you now. Sunmei, 1 month, 2 months?
Maybe summer.
Maybe summer. Okay, got a couple of you getting done. Early summer for Sunmei. Ibrahim? Oh, you want to come up here and explain so they can hear? Confessions today. Ibrahim had a rough experience in Saudi Arabia.
So when I came here, I started my PhD in curriculum instruction, and it was about augmented reality to teach English to speakers of other languages. And I have developed the augmented reality program, curriculum, and everything, conducted the study, passed the qualifying exam back in Saudi Arabia, and then I completed writing the dissertation as well. It is done. And I have a committee that the committee was about to meet next week, and I will defend. And suddenly one professor said, "You are in Saudi Arabia?" I said, "No, I am in the United States." He said, "You should come." I said, "I can't. It is COVID, not time. And if I left the United States, I cannot come back to the United States." So I couldn't defend. That's it. They didn't agree to do it on Zoom. Yeah.
Wow. Everyone's unique, but hopefully you all will find success here in the dissertation process. Any questions that anyone has? We've gone a little bit longer than I planned for tonight. I had a fourth part. I think I'll wait on until later on, some writing tips, unless people want more. But I think we're about done here. Any questions, comments? Anyone like to stand up here and talk to remote folks? Amita, why don't you come up and tell people what you're studying? Yeah, people want to hear come here, Amita, come on. Amita's collecting data and about to defend here. So tell them what.
Hi, everybody. I am working on dissertation topic is promoting intercultural communicative competence in less commonly taught language classrooms. And I collected data just before COVID. Excuse me. And my throat is so dry. So I collected data just before COVID, and thank you. COVID started, and it's so hard to do member checks with your participants. Thank you. And they were so busy. Less commonly taught language instructors, they teach 12 months. They teach intensive summer classes, and they're busy with trainings, orientations. So it was so hard. And also in my family, my son told me, "I'm getting married in a week." I'm like, "What?" That kind of thing happened. And also, I think the biggest issue was my topic was construct drama. Intercultural communication competence is so broad and so controversial. There is no consensus among scholars. And whenever I went to LCLE and I was looking for an advisor, They were like, "Oh, Mita, yeah, why not?" And then, "What's your topic?" Intercultural. Oh, sorry, I can't be your advisor. So it was so hard to find an advisor, and only Farida Pawan, Dr. Pawan agreed, and she said only with tandem was Dr. Pickard. Okay, so everybody was very, very worried about my construct, but I think I like challenges, and I enjoyed working on my topic, even though I had this family drama or other things going on. I had whole family, COVID going on. Also, I was working with Xiaojing at the Language Technology Center, and we had to help people when COVID struck, because we had to organize webinars to explain people how to teach online. I think I organized at least 28 webinars in 1 year, so there's no way to focus on. But at the same time, I was observing my participants, so it was good. And what else I can say? I mean, thank you.
Thanks for me. I hate to put her on the spot. So Ibrahim's studying augmented reality of Yemenis kids, students, the augmented textbooks for reading. And Amani here is also his wife, who's in the audience. Also, I'm on her dissertation as well. So there's many of you are going to be finishing soon. Any final comments from remote people? Anyone want to jump in and say goodnight or what they got out of tonight? Robert.
Well, first of all, I think it was a very beneficial session. I learned a lot today. I guess I have a quick question regarding the EDD dissertation. So two quick things. The first is, does it have to be within your workplace context, or can you find something outside of that if you're trying to transition careers? Second, how do you find research partners, a particular school or corporation? Just any quick advice on that sort of thing.
From my standpoint, I'm more broad for EDD dissertation, so it depends on your committee members, but most would say if you're in transition to another work setting and you want to look at, so it's something relevant to your career, either at present or in the future.
Okay.
For the most part. In terms of getting, so I have that talk. If you got the Dropbox link, you can get to my talk, and I could send you the YouTube video on that session that I did on how to get data. So if you send me an email, I'll send you that link to that video. But your antennas should be open. Getting data is very important. So always read articles with a mindset of what's useful in this article for my dissertation. What data sets did they get? Could I write to that person and get permission, get the same data sets? I wrote to someone at the University of Minnesota who studied keystrokes. We're going to study keystrokes, and we got advice on how to analyze. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who are studying similar things. That's an inroad. Don't be afraid to become friends with them in LinkedIn or Facebook. That's another way to get a look. Don't be afraid to meet them at a conference. People who are doing similar research, because you'll find out a lot, about how to conduct your study. So at the end of a talk, wait till everyone leaves and walk up afterwards and ask questions. Maybe have a tea with them, and so forth. There are a number of ways in which one can move, can obtain access to data, but it is the key thing. It's a lot of people give up on certain topics because they just can't get a data source, and they move on to another topic. But think broadly about it, talk to others about it. But those are a couple of quick tips. I want to thank you all for coming tonight and staying with us. I'm going to take some folks to Mother Bears, whoever wants to come with me. Anyone's welcome. And I'm going to stop the recording here, and it'll be up in the cloud. Week 9 is going to the cloud, my first face-to-face of the year.